Digital Marketing Radio episode 226. Is live streaming worthwhile for B2B brands? Oh my goodness, why are my buttons not working there? We're broadcasting live and I might have to add in my sound effects afterwards because for some reason some of my buttons aren't working there. Maybe I can even actually get them working just now while we're actually speaking live. So what I'll do is instead of doing the standard introduction, I'll do the standard introduction just in a second, but let's add Mr. Ian Anderson Gray onto the live stream just now because you're a master at dealing with situations that don't necessarily happen as you predict. So what's your biggest live streaming challenge that's happened to you, Ian?
Oh, well, do you know, David, it happens, it still happens today, just these little things. It's more the little things, I think. So things like that, the buttons don't work. And it's a constant issue because I think both of us, we like to tweak and we like to be pushing things forwards and doing some exciting new things. So this is what happens, I think. If we kept things simple and kept things like just staying the same, it would be very boring for us, but it would probably be, we wouldn't have so many things going wrong. So yeah, I mean, back in the day, it was things like, for example, my microphone would be either switched off, or some of the live streaming tools that I used to use in those days, you actually had to add the microphone in as well as the video. And some of my best ever content that I shared at the start was when my microphone was switched off, obviously. So that was one experience that I've had. But I've also had, when I brought in guests, we've had some issues with bringing guests in and the tech going wrong. So it's
Absolutely.
Really a case of staying as calm as you possibly can, and people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone on LinkedIn saying, wow, Ian, great seeing you. So we've got some Ian fans in the room already. So it's
Awesome.
Hopefully that's not your wife talking in the background there, Ian. We've got other people there as well, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, I don't know who that would be.
I did a quick tweak of things. I'm not entirely sure why I've got a Stream Deck working here, which is supposed to be bringing in different noises here, but that's not happening at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with the wonderful content that we're going to record just now, and I'm going to insert the different intros and outros afterwards, because of course this show is as well as being live broadcast on YouTube, on Facebook, on other places, Twitter live as well, including Twitch potentially as well. We are of course recording for a podcast. It's a great way to record for a podcast live streaming. So let me close this particular screen down and announce that the name of the show, and we'll get started with a proper introduction. So I'm going to put myself back onto the screen there, Ian, and just say to the viewer, Digital Marketing Radio episode 226, is live streaming worthwhile for B2B brands? Brought to you in partnership with SEMrush. I'm David Bain, and this is Digital Marketing Radio, the show that delves into the tools, tactics, and tidbits of how to turn a failing digital marketing campaign into a rip-roaring success. Today, we're looking at whether or not B2B brands should be embracing live streaming as a significant part of their content marketing strategy. Joining me to discuss that is a social media and live streaming guru who's been a regular top speaker at events, including Content Marketing World and Social Media Marketing World. He's also a trained professional singer and a nice guy. Welcome to DMR, Ian Anderson Gray.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here and really excited about what you're doing with this show. And I love the graphics. I know podcast listeners are not going to be able to see that, but you can just imagine beauty.
Absolutely. You're not talking about me. You're not talking about yourself, but well, you might be.
I have to say, I do like your snazzy glasses. So.
Well, I think we can compete in that department. Let me just say to the listener, you can find Ian over at iag.me, so a very easy 3-letter domain name. So Ian, live streaming is certainly a key part of online content nowadays, but it seems to me that in the business world, it tends to be used more by personal brands than B2B brands. Is that fair?
I think so. There are some B2B brands that are doing it, but I see it more in the kind of the personal branding space, as you were saying, and I think that's a shame because I think missing out on a lot of advantages that we can talk about in today's show. Um, I am seeing it's interesting. So there's been a slight move since the pandemic that we've been in 2020 and 2021, but in that's kind of forced people to do a bit more. But it's surprising how many B2B brands aren't using live video as much as I would have thought they should do.
Absolutely. David Sace is saying in the comments, absolutely worth it for B2B. Great for building up content and engagement with the audience. But is it not the case that personal brands have the advantage in that the brand is associated with the individual that's doing the talking? So you're building up their personal brand authority. So does that not mean that you're actually, you have more advantages to live stream as a personal brand as opposed to a B2B brand?
Yeah. I think at first glance that's definitely the case, and I think this is one of the big issues that B2B companies have is that they think, well, we're a company, who would we ask to come onto the live stream? But I think B2B brands should be thinking about themselves more from more of a personal brand point of view. Anyway, I think company. Individuals out there, other companies want to interact with other companies, and they want to do it like more of in a person-to-person type of thing. So they want to know who is behind the corporate identity, and there will be people within your business that you can put forwards who will represent you, represent that company. I think that's more difficult to think about as a B2B brand, but I think it's really, there are examples of some companies that are doing an incredibly good job there. They're building a community, and that's it's probably a good time to think about what are the advantages and how can a B2B brand utilize live video. And some of those things would be, for example, to build a community of fans around your company. For example, there's some live streaming tools out there are doing a very good job, and you'd kind of think that should be the case because it's obviously they're selling live video. But I mean, Ecamm Live, Restream, StreamYard, they're all doing very good jobs at producing live video content that engages with the community, that builds that community. And you want to, as a brand, I think it's important to grow a community of fans around your business that are going to do that marketing work for you and to spread the word. And then, of course, the other thing is it's amazing for repurposing or from a repurposing point of view. And I know that you see this, you're doing that on this show. This is the live show that's turning into a podcast. And I think B2B brands can be doing that too, as well. It doesn't have to be the same person every week, but if you can have a cohesive kind of plan and a process of sharing knowledge and entertainment as you go through each week, you can definitely do it as a B2B brand or company.
Okay, I mean, certainly what you were talking about, the ability to turn the live stream content into other forms of content is outstanding. I've published a book in the past from a live stream, and if you have a process, then you can certainly produce so many different types of content, quote cards, smaller videos for social media, podcasts, as you say as well. Now, you touched on different people potentially doing the live streams for the B2B brands. One concern that I would have, perhaps, if I was a B2B brand / business owner, would be to actually be building up the personal brand authority of individuals within the business that might move on somewhere else. So if a B2B brand starts a live stream series, how does that brand actually retain the authority of that live stream series if the star, if the participant ends up moving on somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I have seen this happen, where somebody has had to leave a company and the following was really around them. Interestingly, though, you would have thought that the numbers would go down and the group of people would then move on. but that's not been my experience actually. So there will probably be some kind of drop off, but if you have produced the live shows in the right way, and you have been talking about the brand, and you have been building a community around the brand, not the person, then I think that when that person leaves and then you bring somebody else in and you're really transparent about that, and don't if somebody leaves, don't just then put somebody else in front of the camera and kind of not say anything. Be really open and honest about it. That's important. But I think people will understand that. People move, and it might be a good time actually to kind of almost reboot the show with a slightly different focus and do it that way. So I think it's important as when you do produce your live show as a B2B, that you do have somebody who is a very good host, a very good interviewer if you're going to do an interview show. But although it's good to show their personality, they should always be kind of showing the personality of the business. So it's the question I always ask a B2B company that's thinking about doing a live video: if your company, if your brand was a person, how would you describe that person? And then it's kind of putting that in front of the camera in a way. So I think that's an important thing.
Okay. So how do you sell the value of doing a live stream to a B2B brand who perhaps they're busy at doing so many other different marketing activities? Perhaps they're focused on direct calls to action, and during a live stream, it's perhaps more challenging to do that. It's difficult to measure the true value of that as a one-off. It's more of a brand builder, as we were talking about, rather than actually a medium that you can have that immediate direct call to action. So how do you justify, how do you try and sell the reason behind doing live streams to B2B brands?
So it can be done in different ways. So you could have, for example, a big event coming up. Why not do a live stream to turn that into a live stream? And obviously at the moment, it's very difficult for businesses to do in-person events. So if you have a conference, why not turn that into a live stream? If you've got a product that's coming up, why not do a live stream to celebrate that, to announce that? There are different types of live streams that you can do. And the great thing about that is you can get people watching live. This is something new and exciting that you're going to be talking about. So you can bring in lots of guests onto the show. You could have lots of people watching and have this real community feel to it. And you can then potentially sell. You can have links that people can click on. And there have been plenty of companies that I've worked with where they've been able to get loads of click-throughs to and lots of buzz about a particular product. So that would be one thing that you could do. Lots of other things you could do. I mean, it's a case of thinking about your strategy. So that if you have a particular product coming up or something like an event, then that you could do that. But the other side is to think about it from as you say, from a brand building point of view. This will take time for a live show to develop. So you might want to think about this is a 3 to 6 month project before you're really going to see a lot of traction. Now, some B2B companies out there are going to think, oh, that's a lot of investment for not that many returns in the first couple of weeks, the first month or so. But what you've got to remember is that what you're doing here with a live show, if you construct it really well, and you do an amazing job, David, with all of your shows, because you totally see the power of repurposing. Why not do a regular, like a weekly show where you're maybe bringing in somebody for you to interview, and you're making it fun and engaging as well. So you're showing your expertise as a company. You're also showing that you are real. There are real human beings behind the brand, because people buy from people, even in the B2B sector. That's true. But then the other thing is that once you've done that on a weekly basis, you are first of all creating live content. Second of all, you're creating content for the replay viewers. If you're broadcasting to lots of different channels, you're going live to, say, YouTube and Facebook. So you're targeting the different audiences on that. You could turn it into a podcast. You could do what I do, which is I work with a company that turn my podcast or my live videos into a full-blown blog post, and then social media images all from that. And so with that one live show that you're doing every week, you're killing lots of birds with one stone. So I do love birds, but that's the metaphor. But
I'm going to take that as a clip.
Yeah. So you're doing all of those. You're doing all of those things from just one live show, and you're being able to build your brand up. And I'm a total believer in that. Yes, my company. I'm a personal brand. But I have worked with bigger companies where they've done a similar kind of thing, and it's worked really, really well. The main problem that I think, and this is the bigger the business, the bigger the company that I've worked with, the more they've wanted to control the whole thing. They've wanted to control what is said. They've wanted to control what the people in the comments are saying, and that's kind of understandable. But the problem there is that it becomes less live. It becomes more perfect, and it's actually the bits that go wrong, the flaws, those aspects of it are actually what makes it more attractive to people. And I think some larger B2B companies are slightly uncomfortable with that, or very uncomfortable with that. But the evidence shows in marketing that actually more authenticity, I know it's a buzzword and I hate using it, but showing that the kind of vulnerability, that the flaws within you, the human side of it. This not the flaws of the product, obviously, or the solutions that you're providing, but the fact that you are human beings. And if for example your webcam falls off or something funny like that happens, then that's not a bad thing. And I think that's more of a challenge, I think, for the bigger companies, because they're wanting to put forward this perfect view, and actually perfect does not sell, I don't think.
Yes, when you were talking about thinking of doing a live stream series around an upcoming event, I know not many businesses are at upcoming events, but I think it's a good example, a good analogy, in that what I was thinking of is that what brands often do around events is they have drinks evenings sponsored by their brand, and they're informal get-togethers, and perhaps that's the kind of atmosphere that you're trying to create for your live stream. It's not a formal presentation. Yes. And so if you imagine at these events, you wouldn't want the brand to be doing a 45-minute presentation of how to actually use their product. That's just an inappropriate use of the medium. And I think that's probably a good example of the kind of feeling that you're wishing to portray from live streams.
Absolutely. And you can have lots of fun with it. I mean, I know a lot of the personal brand businesses out there are doing a lot of this, but B2B, bigger B2B companies can learn from this. There's I was live producing an event in November last year. So this was a big conference that would normally happen in person, but because of the lockdown, it had to be done all online. And we didn't want it to be like another death by Zoom conference. We wanted to make it fun and engaging. So during the day, there were keynote talks, there were presentations, that kind of thing. We made it fun and engaging. But then in the evening, we did use Zoom for this, but there was a virtual bar. So and they even brought in a magician and things like that, so to make it fun. So on a live show, you could make it fun. You could have it more like a more informal. You could do something like have a virtual bar as part of it as well, and just to get a bit more fun and engagement as well, just to build that community, because I think that's what is missing out with a lot of these B2B live streams that I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a live stream doesn't necessarily have to be something that happens on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. So some great live streams have been book launches or launches of certain things. Perhaps your own private community is given restricted access to this live stream as a bit of a party or get together or extra incentive for signing up beforehand. What about the best medium for live streaming for B2B brands? We're live streaming to LinkedIn, we're live streaming to YouTube and Facebook and a couple of other places. Is it better off for B2B brands just to focus on one particular social media platform to do that live streaming on?
I think so, to begin with. You can broadcast to more than one platform at the same time, which is, I know what you're doing, David. This is called either multi-streaming or multicasting. And it's a lot easier now than it used to be. And it used to be very difficult to do. You needed to have a very powerful computer to do it. And the other issue is you had this fragmentation of the audience and the comments. Now with a number of video solutions out there, you can follow all the comments from all those different platforms that you stream to. But even still, I think it's important when you're first starting off with live video to keep it simple, to start off focusing on the content and your audience and think, so where is my audience? Where do they mostly hang out? Is it on LinkedIn? If it is LinkedIn, then unfortunately at the moment you have to kind of try and get the LinkedIn gods to bless you with the joys of LinkedIn Live. So it's still in a closed, you have to apply. Yes. But I mean, in the future, hopefully that will change. If it's YouTube, maybe you've got a very engaged YouTube channel. So maybe it would make sense for you to go there. Or Facebook. I know Facebook is not the place always for B2B, but it's still an option. Facebook Live is a very robust platform as well. And then there are other channels as well. So I would maybe focus on one or possibly two to begin with, and then expand it over time. And because multi-streaming is a lot easier now, as long as you're careful to think about your audience on all those different channels, then I think you can do that. I think, for example, with the comments, this is the only thing I find with multi-streaming. I think it's a really good idea to go back afterwards and reply to people's comments and to get build those communities on your live streams. And of course, the more places you go live to, you've got more fragmentation of those comments, and so it becomes a bit more challenging. So just bear that in mind.
Yes, absolutely. I think starting one platform is a good idea. Also because if someone is watching on a single platform, and obviously people do, then they like to see other people watching along with them. If they feel that they're the only person watching, even if they hear mentions of other people on other platforms, they feel kind of on their own and probably less likely to stick around.
You're right. I think you're right there, and there's less of a community feel. So it's probably important at this point to talk about the different audiences on a live stream. And so there are two. And if you're going to be turning your live stream into a podcast, there are three. So actually, technically, on this show at the moment, there are three audiences that we've got to think of. First of all, there's your live viewers, people watching live. And that's where community is really important. If there are loads of people watching on YouTube, but you're watching on Facebook and there's only you, it doesn't feel very community. There doesn't feel that there's a community there. So that's important for that. And then, of course, you've got the people from the future, your replay audience. The community aspect of that is important in terms of the comments, but there's no live view account. And then finally, if you're turning it into a podcast, you've got your podcast listeners, and you've got to think about turning that into just thinking about the audio part of it. So, yeah, I think that's important to think about. But I think just focus on the one platform first, and then over time you can grow that and build that. And there are tools. So one tool that I use, Restream, has a chat feature that will allow you to. So when you comment, it will comment on all those different channels. But they also have a relay service. So if someone comments on Facebook, they'll post that to YouTube, so the people on YouTube can actually see that comment. So you do still get that kind of community feel. It's not quite the same, but it's pretty good.
Great stuff. Johnny Ross saying in the chat, loving the new branding, David. Great to see you, David and Ian. Very interesting conversation. Well, thank you, Johnny. Johnny's a good friend of the show as well. We both know Johnny very well. Hope you're keeping well, Johnny. Just before we move on to the second section of our conversation, Ian, let's just get your thoughts on minimum equipment required in order to actually get going with live streaming. Because obviously we've got a fairly complicated setup ourselves. What would you say is the minimum equipment required to actually get going?
I don't think fairly covers it, certainly for you, David, because, we could get really geeky. Well, yeah, I mean, both of us, I think, David and I, we love the tech. And I don't want to speak for you, David, but I think we both probably like to overcomplicate things sometimes. So I think it's important just to start simply. And I'm a big believer in bootstrapping your live video studio. So if you are totally committed to live streaming as a B2B brand and you've got the budget, then by all means spend $20,000, £20,000, whatever, on a live video studio. But most people will want to start small and then build it up over time, and you get your confidence that way. So in terms of minimum equipment, I always recommend live streaming from a computer. There are more advantages with going live from your computer, such as the ability to schedule your lives, being able to share your screen, being able to use better cameras and microphones and things like that. So you need a powerful computer. There are pros and cons with Macs and PCs, which I won't go into now, but that's the first thing. Second thing, the second most important thing I think is sound. So I always recommend go for a decent microphone. You don't have to spend very much money. I'm a big fan of dynamic microphones. So something like the Samsung QTU microphone it's a USB mic and it works really well. And then the third most important thing is a camera. So ideally, you can use your inbuilt webcam if you have one, but something like a Logitech webcam, like the C920, that's an inexpensive version, or you can go up to using a DSLR camera like the Canon M50 or the Panasonic Lumix range are pretty good too. And then the other thing, the final thing, now you don't need to do this if you have a lot of sun in your world and you're near a window. You could use the sun as your light. But if you live in a slightly, I don't know, where the weather's not quite so, it's a bit more temperamental, we'll put it that way, then I think getting a decent lighting system is good. I started off with some fairly basic ones. I've got some, the company called Neewer, that's Neewer, some LED lights. But I found that what really helped for me, I always found lighting hard, is I bought Elgato key light, and they are a bit pricey, but I think the ability to be able to change the color temperature and the brightness from my computer, so I don't have to go behind the light and change it and all that kind of stuff, changed everything for me. So I'm really happy with my setup now. I've got the Elgato key light there. But you don't need to get all of those things straight away. Just build it up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I will refrain from biting and talking about equipment anymore because, of course, we could continue that discussion for a very long time.
Yeah, we could.
So let's segue to part two of our discussion. So it's now time for Ian's thoughts on the state of digital marketing today. So starting off with secret software. Ian, share a lesser-known MarTech tool that's bringing you a lot of value at the moment.
This is so hard. I hate these questions, David, because there's just so many out there. And I think the secret bit is a bit more difficult because in my world, this is the software that I'm going to talk about is actually quite popular and famous. But so I don't know if you're going to allow me to do this, but I'm going to choose two tools, but they're combined. I use these together, and this is Ecamm Live and Restream. So one thing I didn't mention before, when you're broadcasting from your computer, is you'll need some streaming software, and so I use Ecamm Live. Unfortunately, it's just for Mac, so this is why I find it always difficult to recommend this. I certainly can't recommend it to PC users, but I love Ecamm Live and Restream is its streaming service in its own right. But when you combine the two together, it allows you to schedule your live streams, to stream to all those different platforms at the same time, bring in the comments, and I can highlight them on the screen and bring in guests and do all this cool stuff. And so I don't think there are that many people out there that truly see the power of the combination of those two tools, because it is amazing for what you can do with it. So that's. Am I allowed to choose two but combined? Is that allowed?
I think that would be very difficult to edit out one of them. So I think I'm going to have to let you get away with that, Ian.
That was a very reluctant yes.
Well, next it's time for you to give a mention to someone who deserves it. So someone who'd be good to follow on social media, maybe. I call this Magical Marketer, Who's an up-and-coming marketer that you'd like to give a shout-out to? What we can and what can we learn from them, and where can we find them?
This is hard, and I'm gonna sound like I'm being paid by Ecamm Live here, and I'm not. I promise you, I'm not here. But I love what Katie Fawkes is doing. So she is the marketing manager for Ecamm, and the community that she's built up. So she's built up. She before Katie came to Ecamm, there was a little bit of social media going on, but through what she's done, she's built up an amazing blog there. So pretty much a lot of the live shows are repurposed into blogs. She's built up one of the best communities on Facebook that I've ever seen. It's such a helpful group, and just all the stuff that she does there is just amazing. So you could follow everything on Ecamm. The Ecamm network is her, but you could also follow her on her personal channels as well, because I think she's doing an amazing job.
Oh, so that was Katie Fawkes. Is it Fawkes?
It is.
Okay, wonderful stuff. So I'll make sure that there's a link to Katie in the show notes, in the YouTube show description as well. Let's move on to the this or that round. So this is 10 quick questions, just 2 rows here. Try not to think about the answer too much, and you're only allowed to say the word both on one occasion, so use it wisely. Are you ready to go?
Okay, go on.
TikTok or Twitter?
Twitter.
Facebook or LinkedIn?
Facebook.
YouTube or podcast?
Oh, I think that's going to have to be my both one.
Oh my goodness, you've got 6 more to go, and no both allowed. Traffic or leads?
Leads.
Paid search or SEO?
SEO.
Ads or influencers?
Influencers.
Google ads or Facebook ads?
Facebook ads.
Email or chat?
Email.
Martech stack or all-in-one platform?
Martech stack.
And one-to-one or scale?
I'll say scale.
Oh, you got there in the end.
That was hard.
So that was interesting. So it was YouTube or podcast that was the challenge one there. Does that mean that marketers really should be taking advantage of both mediums nowadays?
I think so. I mean, I found that hard because at the moment, I love consuming YouTube. This sounds awful, but I'm not consuming as much podcasting at the moment. And I think that's basically because I'm stuck inside most of the time. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts when I was driving, and I'm not doing so much driving at the moment. But I love podcasting. I love podcasting. So I actually think there is both mediums have got so many advantages associated with them. There are different audiences, different mediums. With podcasting, you can listen to it while you're doing the dishes, for example, whereas YouTube is more immersive and you have to focus your attention on it a lot more. So the different audiences, podcasting is a bit more intimate as well, I think. So I love the intimacy of podcasting.
Yes, absolutely. I think, funnily enough, with YouTube, when I consume shows on YouTube, and I think I consume more face directly to camera type discussion shows on YouTube, I often just refer to the screen for a few seconds just to get a feel for how someone is trying to come across, but then I'll go back to whatever I was focusing on. So I don't necessarily listen to all the time. So to a certain degree, YouTube, I know podcasting is going through a massive growth curve at the moment, but I think that some people are listening to podcasts or what are podcast shows on YouTube nowadays, and that seems to be an intriguing trend.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take you up to the $10,000 question. If I was to give you $10,000 and you had to spend it over the next few days on a single thing to grow your business, what would you spend it on, and how would you measure success?
Well, there's something I do need to spend money on, but it's certainly not 10,000. That is a backup system. I'm going to buy a NAS drive, but it's certainly not going to be 10,000. So if it was the 10,000 that we need to go for, then I would hire a video editor and animator. So I've been really excited over the last couple of years in growing my business. I've got a small business, but I was a bit of a control freak. We'll put it that way. So I was finding it very difficult to delegate. But I hired a virtual assistant. She has been amazing, and I've got somebody who deals with my ads and my Facebook Messenger bot and a podcast editing. So I've kind of gone all out, but I've had to pause a little bit on that. But the next thing on my list is video editing. Now, I can do it. I kind of enjoy it, but I just don't think it's a good use of my time. So I would be looking to hire somebody who can edit my videos. I want to build my YouTube channel this year, but also somebody who can do, who's very good at effects and animations just to make them fun and engaging. So I think that would probably cost a bit more. So 10,000, maybe that would cover it. I don't know.
Do you know, that was just about the same answer as I got from AJ Wilcox in the previous episode. So I interviewed AJ on LinkedIn ads in the previous episode 225. And AJ said that he'd spend his $10,000 on video production. So you're both very focused on producing high quality video over the next year. So video is key. Anyway, so far we've been focusing on what your digital marketing tactics currently are. But now for my final question, I'd like to focus on what you're going to do next. So next on the list, what's one marketing activity or two that you haven't tried yet or you want to test soon?
So I have been on this platform a little bit, but not that much because I just haven't had the time and it's not been the focus. So at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I was planning out my activities for the whole year. I've set up, when I'm going to be launching my blog posts every week, my podcast, my live show, and social media stuff. And then in December, it's been around for longer than that. This new kind of thing has come on to everyone's radar. It's been talked about a lot. I almost feel that I shouldn't even mention it because everyone's talking about it. And that is Clubhouse. And Clubhouse is this tool. It's kind of like a live audio chat system or app. And basically you can join rooms. You have people speaking in there. You can put your hand up and you can be promoted to the stage and you can have these conversations. I was a little bit dubious about it. I kind of am when there's something new that's come up and everyone's talking about how amazing it is. I think, yeah, but what's the catch? And I found that some rooms were just full of these people who are full of their own self-importance, and it just put me off. But I have joined some rooms and I have created my own. I've hosted a couple of rooms myself, and the community that you can build from that and the conversations, the relationships that you can get from that are amazing. And so one thing I'm looking at doing is when I do a live show, I'm thinking about then directly after that, going on to Clubhouse, which at the moment is iOS only. They are working on an Android app, by the way. And I'll go on there and I'll invite my audience to come on there and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. It's more intimate. I prefer the smaller rooms as well, where there's a smaller number of people and everyone feels welcome. And it would not be about me. It's about me asking other people about what they think about it and getting them they can ask me questions. But this year for me, the word that I'm going to use to describe my year, my focus for this year is community. And then when Clubhouse came about, I thought, actually, I should probably be focusing a lot more on this because I think that's a great way to build community. I'm not so much interested in the big numbers. I want to build a community of passionate people who love what I do and want to work with me. So that's going to be my focus, Clubhouse. And I'm going to focus on doing it maybe once per week or twice per week, because the other thing I found about Clubhouse is it's a bit of a time sucker. So I think I want to be really strategic about how I use it. And it's going to be, I think, 1 to possibly 2 times per week is what I'm going to do.
Lovely, yes. I've registered my name on Clubhouse, but I did it with my wife's iPhone, actually. And I was telling you that before we came on air that I'm generally an Android guy. I've got an iPad that I use a little bit as well. But unfortunately, the iPad that I've got, the Clubhouse app doesn't work with that because the iPad's so old. So you have to upgrade your device. So once I get a new device, which will be fairly soon, I will certainly give Clubhouse a go, and that'll be an interesting one, I'm sure. It's important, as you said, not to get too sucked into it, not to let it distract your existing strategy, because it's so easy just to jump on a new piece of technology and embrace it and spend far too much time there. So I think you're using it in a very diligent, methodical way. So it's a good on you for that one. Ian,
the idea.
That's the idea, absolutely. You've been listening to Ian Anderson-Gray from IAG.me, who he's been on today's episode of Digital Marketing Radio, and he shared a few wonderful tips. So starting off with live streaming, of course. I loved the tip that we talked about around how to position a live stream. When you talked about events, and I compared it to maybe a drinks party prior to the event, and you said, well, it's really important not to try to be too perfect and embrace the things that can go wrong. So a lot of good conversation around that, and hopefully some tips that people can tip up. Can actually implement within their content marketing strategy over the coming year, because it's great to embrace that. Just jump in there and give it a go, and use it for something specific like that. I then asked you about secret software. You talked about Ecamm and Restream, so great recommendations there. I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes as well. Your magical marketer, Katie Fox, again, I'll include her link in there as well. And next on the list, Next on the list, Clubhouse. So Clubhouse is something that I'm going to give a go as well, and that seems very exciting. So Ian, as I said, everything's going to be in the show notes there, or on YouTube, or in the show notes on digitalmarketingradio.com. What's the best social platform that someone can follow you on and say hi?
Well, I've carelessly scattered myself across most of them, so but I think I quite like Instagram is good. So you could either Instagram or Twitter, and my handle is iag.me. That's IAGDOTME.
Wonderful stuff. Well, I've been your host, David Bain. You can also find me producing podcasts for B2B brands over at castingcred.com. On the next episode, I'm going to be talking to SEO expert Lucas Zelezny. He's going to be sharing some questions about what you should be asking your SEO consultant. So if you've got an SEO consultant, or you're thinking of getting an SEO consultant, this is the episode that you need to listen to, because we'll go through the exact questions that you need to ask them. Remember, if you want to watch that episode live, subscribe on the Digital Marketing Radio YouTube channel. Remember to hit that little notification bell when you do that. If you're more of an audio-only fan, find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all the other lovely podcast places. However, until we meet again, stay hungry, stay foolish, and stay subscribed. Aloha.